Echoes in the hallway, my daughter in the school where my past haunts me. Chapter 1. A Shadow over Sterling Academy, Atlanta, Georgia, 2024. The morning sun streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, but I barely noticed. My daughter, Lily, a vibrant, optimistic 11-year-old, chattered excitedly about her first day at Sterling Academy. "Mom, do you think they have a good debate team? And I heard the art studio is amazing." I forced a smile, stirring my coffee, the warmth doing little to dispel the chill settling in my stomach. "I'm sure it's wonderful, honey, just like we talked about." Sterling Academy. The name itself was a ghost, a whisper from a past I had desperately tried to outrun. It was an elite private school in our affluent suburb of Atlanta, renowned for its academic excellence and prestigious alumni. It was also the school I had attended for a brief, scarring period almost 30 years ago. I was Olivia Hayes, now a successful graphic designer, a confident, independent woman. But the girl I had been at Sterling was a different person. Insecure, quiet, and profoundly out of place. My parents, striving to give me every opportunity, had stretched their finances to send me there on a partial scholarship. I was one of the scholarship kids, a fact that seemed to hang around me like an invisible scarlet letter. The social hierarchy at Sterling was brutal, a glittering, unforgiving pyramid, and at the very top sat the untouchable Queen Bee, Victoria Vance. Beautiful, privileged, effortlessly cruel. Victoria, with her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer clothes, made it her mission to remind me at every turn that I didn't belong. She didn't use physical violence. Her weapons were far more insidious. The whispered jokes, the sudden silences when I approached, the accidental spills of drinks on my carefully chosen budget-friendly outfits, the relentless exclusion from every social gathering. She orchestrated elaborate pranks, leaving mean-spirited notes in my locker, spreading humiliating rumors that clung to me like a toxic scent. My most vivid and painful memory was the charity auction incident. Victoria, pretending to be gracious, organized a mock auction during a school assembly. Her item was a drawing I had submitted for the school art exhibition, a landscape I was incredibly proud of. She auctioned it off, encouraging mocking bids of pennies, openly laughing and making disparaging comments about my cheap art and scholarship talent. The entire school assembly laughed with her. I stood there, mortified, tears stinging my eyes, wanting nothing more than to disappear. I quit Sterling Academy a week later. The humiliation was too profound. I transferred to a local public school, where I found my footing, but the scars of Sterling and Victoria Vance remained. For years, I had deliberately avoided any connection to Sterling Academy. But Lily, my bright, talented daughter, had excelled in her old school and needed a more challenging environment. Sterling offered the best academic program, a renowned arts department that perfectly suited her burgeoning talents, and a scholarship program that had evolved to be genuinely inclusive. My husband David, a kind and practical man, pointed out that it was a different era, a different Sterling. "It's not your school anymore, Olivia," he'd said gently. "It's Lily's chance." I had reluctantly agreed, pushing down the knot of anxiety that tightened in my stomach every time I thought of those polished hallways. I had tried to tell myself it was a new chapter, a chance for Lily to thrive where I had faltered. But the apprehension remained, a cold dread. Now, as Lily gathered her backpack, her eyes shining with unadulterated excitement, I felt a wave of maternal protectiveness so fierce it almost buckled my knees. How could I send her into a place that held such painful memories for me. How could I protect her from the kind of cruelty I had endured? "Have a wonderful first day, sweetie," I said, kissing her forehead, my voice catching slightly. "I love you." "Love you too, Mom. Wish me luck," she chirped, and then she was out the door, her bright energy disappearing down the driveway. I stood in the silence of the kitchen, staring at the school calendar. A name, circled in red, stood out on the schedule for 5th grade. Mr. Vance, homeroom and English. Mr. Vance. My breath hitched. The name, instantly recognizable, sent a jolt of icy dread through me. Vance. Could it be the same last name as Victoria? My tormentor. A son, perhaps? It was an affluent, tight-knit community, generations attending the same prestigious schools. It was certainly possible. A cold wave washed over me. What if he was her son? What if he carried his mother's arrogance, her casual cruelty? What if the apple didn't fall far from the tree? The thought was a chilling premonition, a dark shadow lengthening over Lily's bright new beginning. The ghost of Victoria Vance, it seemed, wasn't just in the hallways of Sterling Academy. It was in Lily's very classroom. And now, I would have to face it, not just for myself, but for my daughter's sake. The past, I realized with a profound sense of dread, was far from buried. It was waiting, quietly, in homeroom 5A. Chapter 2. The unnerving familiarity. The first few weeks of school were an agony of apprehension. Every morning, as I dropped Lily off at Sterling Academy, I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. The imposing stone facade, the perfectly manicured lawns, they brought back a flood of unwelcome memories, the echoes of whispered taunts and searing humiliation. Lily, oblivious to my inner turmoil, thrived. She loved her classes, made friends easily, and gushed about her homeroom teacher, Mr. Vance. "He's so funny, Mom, and he makes English actually interesting. He tells us stories about ancient myths, and he says my essays are really insightful." Insightful. The word stung. It was the same word my own English teacher, Mrs. Davison, had used to describe my writing back then, a word that had been a lifeline in my darkest moments. Hearing it from a Vance felt like a cruel twist of fate, a mocking echo. I still hadn't seen Mr. Vance myself. School communication was primarily online, and parent-teacher conferences weren't until later in the semester. I kept telling myself it was a common name, that it couldn't possibly be her son. But the anxiety gnawed at me. Then came the school's annual Welcome Back picnic, a casual event held on the vast, sun-drenched lawn. I felt a surge of nausea just thinking about it, but Lily insisted. "Mr. Vance said he hopes all the parents come. It's a great chance to meet everyone." Reluctantly, I agreed. I dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that was professional yet approachable, a silent armor against the insecurities that Sterling Academy still managed to awaken. As we mingled, Lily pulling me enthusiastically towards a group of her new friends, I scanned the crowd, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. And then I saw him, standing near the 5th grade tables, laughing with a group of parents, tall with dark wavy hair and kind, intelligent eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He looked to be in his late 20s or early 30s. He looked nothing like Victoria. Victoria was blonde, sharp-featured, with a brittle elegance. This man had a softer, more approachable demeanor. But it was his face. There was a subtle familiarity, a curve to his jawline, a certain expression when he tilted his head. It was a resemblance I couldn't quite place, but it sent a fresh wave of dread through me. This had to be him. Lily, noticing my gaze, tugged my hand. "Oh, there's Mr. Vance. Come on, Mom. I want you to meet him." My feet felt like lead. I wanted to turn and run, to shield myself and my daughter from the impending confrontation, but I couldn't. I was a mother now, and I had to be strong. Lily, beaming, led me directly towards him. "Mr. Vance, this is my mom, Olivia Hayes." He turned and our eyes met. His smile was warm, genuine. "Ah, Lily, so glad you could make it. And Ms. Hayes, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Lily talks about you all the time, especially your amazing design work." His voice was calm, pleasant, devoid of any hint of arrogance. Yet as he spoke, I saw it again, that subtle, unnerving familiarity. It was not in his direct features, but in the way he carried himself. A certain posture, a slight tilt of the head, a gesture with his hand as he spoke. It was a ghost of Victoria, a flicker of her mannerisms, devoid of her malice. It was as if I was seeing a reflection of her, but distorted through a prism of kindness. "It's a pleasure to meet you too, Mr. Vance," I managed, my voice a little breathless. I was still scrutinizing him, trying to place the familiarity, trying to understand why this man who seemed so kind could carry the name of my tormentor. "You know," he said, a thoughtful expression on his face, "your last name, Hayes, it sounds familiar. Were you perhaps a student here at Sterling yourself, a while back?" My heart pounded. He knew, or he suspected. This was it, the moment of truth, my past finally colliding with my present. "Yes," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "Many years ago, I was here for a short time in middle school." He nodded slowly, a knowing look in his eyes. "I thought so. My mother, Victoria, often spoke of a scholarship student named Olivia Hayes from that time. She said you were an incredibly talented artist." My stomach dropped. Victoria, his mother. It was confirmed, and his mother had praised my art? The same woman who had humiliated me at the charity auction, mocking my cheap art. This was an alternate reality. This was a direct contradiction to my most painful memory. She did?" I stammered, utterly bewildered. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "Oh yes, she kept talking about how she wished you had stayed. She thought you had a truly unique perspective. She said you had a way of seeing the world that was very special, and that you never quite understood how brilliant you were." He paused, then added, "She has always admired true talent, especially when it comes from a humble place. She sometimes regrets not reaching out to you more, to encourage you." I stared at him, speechless. This was not the Victoria Vance I remembered. This was a portrait of a woman utterly unrecognizable. A woman who admired my art, regretted my departure, even saw me as brilliant. It was as if he was talking about a completely different person. The world tilted on its axis again, a profound sense of confusion washing over me. The ghost of my past had not just appeared in the hallway. It had just been painted in an entirely new, unsettling light. And the man before me, her son, was holding the brush. Chapter 3, The Fractured Reflection. Mr. Vance's words about his mother, Victoria, praising my art and regretting my departure, echoed in my mind like a disorienting chime. It was a narrative so utterly contrary to my lived experience that it left me reeling. The image of Victoria Vance, the cruel queen bee, was seared into my memory, a permanent scar. How could his mother, the same Victoria, be this woman who admired my unique perspective and wished I had stayed? It felt like a deliberate gaslight, a cruel manipulation of my memories, or a profound misunderstanding on his part. I mumbled something incoherent about it being a long time ago and excused myself, my mind churning. Lily, sensing my sudden discomfort, looked at me with concern. "Mom, are you okay? You look a little pale." "I'm fine, sweetie," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just a bit overwhelmed by all the new faces." I spent the rest of the picnic in a daze, avoiding Mr. Vance, desperately trying to reconcile the two Victorias, the one who had humiliated me at the charity auction, who had mocked my art, who had made my life a living hell at Sterling, and the one his son described, a discerning admirer of talent, a woman of regret. It was impossible. One of these realities had to be false, and I knew, with every fiber of my being, which one was true for me. Over the next few weeks, I found myself obsessively replaying old memories of Sterling, seeking confirmation of my truth. The whispered jokes, the cold shoulders, the accidental spills, they were all there, vivid and painful. The charity auction incident, in particular, remained a sharp, unblinking wound. How could his mother have admired that drawing when she publicly ridiculed it? I even considered pulling Lily out of Sterling. The thought of her being taught by the son of my tormentor, a son who seemed to exist in an alternate, whitewashed version of the past, filled me with a deep unease. But Lily was thriving. She loved Mr. Vance's class, loved the school. How could I sacrifice her happiness for my unresolved trauma? The only person I could confide in was my old English teacher from the public school, Mrs. Davison, who had been my lifeline after I left Sterling. She was now retired, living a quiet life in South Carolina, but we still spoke regularly. I recounted the entire bizarre encounter with Mr. Vance. He said his mother admired my art, that she regretted I left. I practically spluttered into the phone. "Mrs. Davison, she tore me apart. She made me a laughingstock. She made me want to disappear." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Mrs. Davison's gentle voice, tinged with a familiar wisdom. "Olivia, I remember how much you suffered at Sterling, and I remember the depth of your talent. And yes, I remember that auction." My heart pounded. Finally, validation. "So he's lying, right? Or she's a master manipulator?" "Perhaps neither, dear," Mrs. Davison replied, her voice thoughtful. "Memories are funny things, Olivia. They are filtered through our own experiences, our own pains, our own perspectives. And people are rarely just one thing, especially to their children." She paused, then continued. "I recall something about that auction, not what Victoria did, but what she said afterwards. She came to the art department, quite upset actually. She told the art teacher that her intention had been to champion your drawing, to highlight it as an example of raw talent that deserved more recognition. She said she felt the other students, and perhaps she herself, had misunderstood the tone she was trying to set. She was trying to be ironic, she claimed, to mock the snobbery of the wealthier parents who overlooked real art. She said she felt terrible about how it went down. She felt it backfired terribly, and she felt quite embarrassed and guilty about your reaction. I remember the art teacher, a cynical woman, just scoffed. But I remember Victoria being genuinely distraught for a day or two after. She even asked about you. My mind reeled. Victoria, distraught? Guilty? Mocking snobbery, not me? This was an entirely new facet, a fractured reflection of a memory I had held so tightly for so long. It didn't excuse her actions, not entirely. The impact of her cruelty was undeniable, but it painted a more complex, unsettling picture. Was it possible that what I perceived as deliberate malice was, for her, a misjudged attempt at something else? Was it possible that her son's version of his mother wasn't a fabrication, but a glimpse into a side of her I had never seen, or chosen not to see? Through the fog of my own pain, she told the art teacher she wished you had stayed. Mrs. Davison continued softly. She genuinely believed your art was special, Olivia, and she recognized, perhaps belatedly, the damage her misguided irony had done. The phone felt heavy in my hand. This wasn't simple. It wasn't the clear-cut villain I had carried in my mind for decades. It was a person, multifaceted, capable of both deep insensitivity and perhaps a twisted form of admiration. Her son's words weren't a lie. They were simply his truth, filtered through his perspective of his mother. A profound realization dawned on me. The deepest wound from Sterling Academy wasn't just the humiliation from Victoria. It was my own unchallenged narrative, my refusal to look beyond my pain, to consider the possibility of a different perspective, however remote. My past, I realized, was not just about what happened, but about how I had chosen to remember it. And that choice, by allowing Lily to attend Sterling, had finally forced me to confront a far more complex truth. The shadow over Sterling Academy wasn't just Victoria Vance's cruelty. It was also the rigid, unexamined framework of my own memory. And now, for Lily's sake, and for my own, I had to understand it fully. Chapter 4: A Different Kind of Legacy. Mrs. Davison's revelation about Victoria Vance's supposed remorse after the auction left me in a state of profound disorientation. It didn't erase my pain, but it complicated my narrative, forcing me to confront the uncomfortable possibility that my memory, while undeniably rooted in suffering, might not be the complete picture. The black and white villain of my past was suddenly, unsettlingly, painted in shades of gray. I found myself observing Mr. Vance more closely. He was genuinely kind, attentive to his students, with an infectious enthusiasm for literature. He treated Lily with the same respect and encouragement that Mrs. Davison had shown me years ago. He celebrated her unique perspective, just as his mother had, ironically, apparently done. The dissonance was almost unbearable. The internal conflict gnawed at me. How could I reconcile the Victoria who had crushed my spirit with the Victoria her son clearly adored and respected? And more importantly, how could I navigate this for Lily without projecting my past onto her bright, unburdened present? I decided that direct communication, however uncomfortable, was necessary. Not with Victoria, who I wasn't ready for, but with her son. I needed to understand his perspective, to see if his mother's regret was a genuine, albeit deeply misguided, attempt at connection, or simply a convenient narrative for her son. I requested a private meeting with Mr. Vance after school, ostensibly to discuss Lily's progress, but truly to delve into the haunting echoes of my past. He greeted me warmly, his smile still carrying that subtle, unsettling familiarity. "Ms. Hayes, I'm glad we could connect," he said, ushering me into his classroom. It was bright, filled with student artwork and shelves of books. Lily is truly a delight. She has a remarkable imagination and a wonderful way with words, just like my mother described you. I took a deep breath. "Mr. Vance," I began, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I need to be frank with you. Your mother's comments about me, about my art, they were profoundly different from my experience at Sterling." I then, carefully, recounted the charity auction incident, the public humiliation, the feeling of wanting to disappear. I watched his face as I spoke, searching for any sign of dismissal, disbelief, or the arrogance I remembered from his mother. His expression remained open, thoughtful, tinged with a growing sadness. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment, staring out the window. I'm so sorry you experienced that, Miss Hayes, he finally said, his voice soft, genuinely pained. That is not at all how my mother described it to me, or how I understood it. My mother, she told me she had tried to do something to highlight your work, that she had misjudged the situation terribly, and that she had always regretted how it made you feel. She said she felt she had inadvertently caused you pain, and that it deeply bothered her. He turned back to me, his blue eyes earnest. My mother has always been a complex person, Miss Hayes. Brilliant, but sometimes socially clumsy. She valued authenticity above all else, and she had a strange way of expressing it. I know she saw your talent. She genuinely did. She often told me that your art and your quiet strength stood out in a school she sometimes found superficial. He continued, she was always fiercely proud of me, her only child, and she often talked about wanting me to be a teacher, to connect with students on a deeper level, to see their hidden talents, especially those who might feel overlooked. She said she learned a lot from her mistakes in school, and she wanted me to be different. He paused, a wistful look on his face. When I chose to teach at Sterling, she was overjoyed. She said it was a chance for me to create a different kind of legacy, a legacy of empathy, in the very place where she sometimes felt she had fallen short. The words different kind of legacy struck me with the force of a revelation. This wasn't about excusing Victoria's past behavior, but about understanding its complex ripple effects. Her son wasn't blind to her flaws, but he had chosen to build something positive from them, to carry forward a better version of her intentions. His kindness, his empathy, his belief in Lily's talent, these weren't coincidental. They were, in a profound and unexpected way, a testament to a different kind of legacy, one shaped, perhaps, by his mother's own regrets and belated insights. I had no idea, I whispered, the knot in my stomach finally loosening, replaced by a strange mix of sorrow and a newfound understanding. The Victoria Vance I had demonized was perhaps not entirely wrong about my art, nor entirely without remorse. The pain was real, but the intention, perhaps, was not purely malicious. It was a deeply flawed, misguided attempt at something else entirely. I hope, Mr. Vance said, a gentle smile returning, that my presence here and Lily's experience can help rewrite some of those difficult memories for you. My mother always said that true growth comes from understanding our past, not from running from it. His words, echoing a wisdom I now recognized as uniquely his own, offered a strange form of closure. My past at Sterling would always be a part of me, but its narrative was no longer solely defined by Victoria Vance's cruelty. It was now interwoven with the unexpected grace of her son, a testament to a different kind of legacy, a legacy of empathy born from a fractured reflection, a bridge built between pain and understanding, allowing me to finally step out of the shadows of my past and embrace Lily's vibrant present, unburdened by old ghosts. Chapter 5, The Unwritten Chapter. The conversation with Mr. Vance was a catharsis, a profound unraveling of a decades-old wound. It didn't erase the pain of my past at Sterling, but it recontextualized it. The sharp edges of humiliation dulled, replaced by the softer, more complex contours of human fallibility and the unexpected ways we influence each other across generations. Victoria Vance, the singular villain, dissolved into a more nuanced figure, a woman capable of both inflicting deep pain and perhaps holding a twisted admiration. Her son, Julian, as I now knew his first name, was a testament to a different path, a legacy of empathy born from his mother's own belated self-awareness. my relationship with Julian Vance, Lily's teacher, transformed. The initial apprehension was replaced by a quiet respect, and dare I say, a comfortable camaraderie. We spoke occasionally about Lily's progress, about the nuances of teaching and learning, and sometimes, indirectly, about the complexities of growing up at Sterling. He continued to be an exceptional teacher, nurturing Lily's burgeoning talent, much like Mrs. Davison had nurtured mine. Lily continued to thrive at Sterling Academy. She loved the challenging academics, the vibrant arts program, and the inclusive environment. She adored Julian, seeing him as an inspiring mentor. I watched her flourish, unburdened by the shadows that had once clung to me, and felt a profound sense of relief and gratitude. My initial fear of sending her into my painful past had been replaced by the joy of seeing her write her own vibrant future. My own healing journey continued. I realized that my most enduring wound from Sterling wasn't just Victoria's cruelty, but my own stubborn clinging to a one-dimensional narrative. Julian's presence and Mrs. Davison's wisdom had forced me to confront the uncomfortable truth that people are complex, and that pain, while real, doesn't always have a simple explanation. I learned to let go of the rigid narrative, allowing for nuance, for forgiveness, not just for Victoria, but for myself, for the girl who had carried that burden for so long. I never sought out Victoria Vance. There was no grand reconciliation, no dramatic confrontation. Julian told me his mother was still very much herself, living in Palm Beach, Florida, but that she was quieter now, reflecting more on her life. He often spoke of her with a complex mixture of love, exasperation, and understanding, painting a picture of a brilliant, flawed woman who had perhaps matured with age, grappling with the echoes of her own past choices. The thought of facing her directly still brought a knot of anxiety, but it was no longer a paralyzing fear. The power she once held over me had dissipated. Her son had, inadvertently, set me free from that specific ghost. Instead, I focused on a different kind of legacy. I began volunteering at Sterling Academy, not just as a parent, but as a mentor for young art students, particularly those on scholarship, or those who seemed to be struggling to find their place. I shared my own story, carefully, about overcoming insecurity and finding my voice through art and writing. I spoke about the importance of self-belief, of finding your own community, and of understanding that kindness, not popularity, is the true currency of worth. I wanted to be the Mrs. Davison for a new generation of students, a source of quiet strength and unwavering belief. One afternoon, I sat in Julian's classroom after school, helping him organize some art supplies for a new project. Lily was at debate practice, and the room was quiet, filled with the comforting scent of paints and paper. I looked at the artwork, pinned to the walls, the joyful, uninhibited creations of his students. Then my eyes fell on a small, framed drawing on Julian's desk. It was a landscape, rendered in soft watercolors, with a distinct, almost ethereal quality. It was unmistakably my drawing, the one from the charity auction, meticulously framed and preserved. "Julian," I said softly, picking it up, This is my drawing." He turned, a gentle smile on his face. "Yes, my mother kept it. She always said it reminded her of what true talent looked like, and how easily it could be overlooked. She gave it to me when I started teaching here. She said it was a reminder to always see the potential in every student, no matter their background, no matter how quiet they might be." My eyes welled up. It was a profound moment, a full circle. The object of my deepest humiliation, the symbol of my public shaming, had been cherished, and passed down as a quiet testament to potential, a silent plea for a different kind of empathy. The very drawing that had made me want to disappear had become a guiding star for her son, a symbol of the legacy he was building. The unwritten chapter of my life at Sterling Academy was now being written through Lily's experiences, through my newfound purpose as a mentor, and through the unexpected, redemptive presence of Julian Vance. The echoes in the hallway were no longer just the painful whispers of the past. They were now filled with the vibrant laughter of Lily, the gentle guidance of Julian, and the quiet, powerful hum of my own healing, a testament to the enduring human capacity for growth, understanding, and the profound, transformative power of empathy that transcends even the deepest of scars. My journey had come full circle, not with vengeance, but with a surprising and profound sense of peace.